Down, go to hell. Silence. Die. No nightmare gets slammed. Good night. This barely even counts. Oh, down your rest. Down, go to hell. Silence. Stop. Your nightmare get right out. Good night. You shall die.
Yeah, I really have no idea what to say at this point. Like, this is the 50th time that I'm saying that this is my final combo analysis video. Well, I'm just gonna skip this whole part, so I really don't care. So, this is the spiral combo analysis. Now, the spiral combo is basically a 1-to-1 replica of V-Gaming's Mirage combo. It's not exactly a 1-to-1 because V-Gaming uses the blistering blades at some point, and I don't use them because I felt they were completely redundant. But yeah, this is the spiral combo. It utilizes all of the Mirage blade attacks. And as is the case with a lot of my combos, this is one of those incredibly easy, but also incredibly frustrating combos. It is infuriating at times, and it's all because of this one segment, this one teeny tiny, this like 1 second long part in the combo that is just incredibly inconsistent, and you guessed it, it's not a skill issue. 90% of the time, it's not a skill issue. It's a game issue. It's an issue with the camera. It's this issue where the game doesn't register inputs. It doesn't react to your commands. It's just incredibly annoying, and this combo is very similar in that respect to the Moist combo. The only reason why I decided to replicate this combo is because of that spiral blade setup, the one setup that's very problematic. So that's kind of this thing that, like, the moment I saw V-Gaming's combo, I was like, okay, I gotta replicate this because I didn't use the spiral blades in any of my combos. It's one of those attacks that I simply didn't use at all. And I had to change that. I was like, okay, I gotta do this. I absolutely have to do this. So, yeah, let's start the analysis. So you know how Rising Star basically has 2 slashes? The first slash launches the enemy slightly into the air, but the second slash launches the enemy even higher up into the air. So what you want to do here for this combo is you only want to use the first slash of Rising Star. So you press right and you hold the attack button, which is Rising Star, and after the first slash launches the enemy slightly into the air, you immediately use Trig down to descend to the ground. Basically, you cancel Rising Star. You use Rapid Slash with the Yamato, which is right plus attack button. Now you use Air Trick to immediately teleport to the enemy in the air. You let go of the lock-on. You switch to Beowulf. And you press right plus attack button to use this reverse starfall. Now, as you guys already know, Starfall is basically, with Beowulf, you lock on and you press the attack button. But if you want to use this reverse Starfall, what you want to do is you got to let go of the lock on and you got to press right plus attack button, or in my case, D plus left mouse button, because you want Vergil to go right. You don't want him to go to where the enemy is. You want the opposite direction. So you let go of the lock-on and you press right plus attack button, and Vergil will use this reverse starfall, this reverse kick. Now you wait a fraction of a millisecond, you switch to the Yamato, and you use Rapid Slash. Now Rapid Slash is the left plus attack button, but in this case you want to press left and you want to hold the attack button, and you keep holding it, you keep holding it, you keep holding it, and then you release it in time. You gotta have perfect timing, and you use this perfect Judgment Cut. If you release it too late, you'll end up using a regular Judgment Cut, and if you don't release it in time, like if you release it too early, you will not use a Judgment Cut at all. So you need to have that perfect timing. It's very easy though, so don't worry. At this point, you immediately switch the Mirage Edge and you use Drive, which is left plus right plus attack button. So you use Drive, but there's a catch. You gotta press left plus right and you gotta hold the attack button for a very long time. We're talking like 2 seconds or 3 seconds. So left plus right, and then you hold the attack button, and immediately after using this, you once again press left plus right, and then you press the Mirage Blade button to use the Heavy Rain Blades. So basically, you use Drive, and immediately after using Drive, you use the Heavy Rain Blades. So left plus right plus holding the attack button for Drive, and then immediately left plus right plus holding the Mirage Blade button for the Heavy Rain Blades, because the Heavy Rain Blades are basically left plus right plus holding the Mirage Blade button when you're on the left side. And at this point, when your Mirage Edge starts glowing, you finally release your attack button and you use Round Trip. Now, as you guys already know, when you have the Mirage Edge equipped and you press and hold the attack button, and then you release it after like 2 seconds when your Mirage Edge starts glowing, that will result in Vergil using Round Trip, this circular sword. So that is why you gotta hold the attack button for a very long time while using Drive. So left plus right plus holding the attack button until your Mirage Edge starts glowing, and then when the Heavy Rain Blades hit the enemy and freeze them in time, and when your Mirage Edge starts glowing, you release the attack button, and you use Round Trip. At this point, you switch to the Yamato, and you press and hold the right mouse button. Well, in my case, you basically press and hold the Mirage Blade button, and this will cause the spiral blades to appear. So spiral blades are essentially just pressing and holding the Mirage Blade button. Alright? And when you press it and you hold it, and these spiral swords will surround Vergil. Alright? That's basically how it works. And as you've probably noticed, the moment I pressed the right mouse button, or well, the Mirage Blade button, the moment I input the spiral blades, the enemy became unfrozen. Now you might be wondering why that is. It's very simple. So every time you use any attack with the Mirage Blades, be it Storm Blades, Blistering Blades, Heavy Rain Blades, Spiral Blades, the first thing that's going to happen is Vergil will throw one Mirage Blade at the enemy before actually activating the attack. So in this case, the enemy was frozen in time, he was frozen in the air by the Heavy Rain Blades. And then I pressed the Mirage Blade button and I started holding it so that I could use the Spiral Blades. But the first thing that happened before the Spiral Blades appeared was this one Mirage Blade hit the enemy and it unfroze them, causing them to fall directly onto the Round Trip. So that's what ended up happening here. Every time you use an attack with the Mirage Blades, this one Mirage Blade will hit the enemy, and in this case, if the enemy is frozen in the air, they will become unfrozen. So that's what happened here. So again, to recap, after using Drive and after freezing the enemy in the air with the Heavy Rain Blades, you finally let go of the attack button and you use Round Trip. Now you switch to the Yamato and you press and hold the Mirage Blade button to use the Spiral Blades. So you keep holding the Mirage Blade button until the Spiral Blades appear, and then once they've appeared, you stop holding the Mirage Blade button. You let go of it. And now you immediately basically start using Yamato Combo B, which is attack button, pause, attack button. But while using Yamato Combo B, you once again press and hold the Mirage Blade button, and you don't let go of it until I tell you to. So that's basically how this works. And the reason for this is very simple. So the way Spiral Blades work is, like I said, you press and hold the Mirage Blade button, and these Spiral Blades will appear. They will surround Vergil, and as you can see, the Spiral Blades are spinning. right? And now you're free to let go of the Mirage Blade button, and they'll just keep spinning around Vergil like this. But if you press and hold the Mirage Blade button again, like you press it and you hold it, while they're spinning, what's going to happen is they will stop spinning. And now, when you let go of the Mirage Blade button again, they will scatter, hitting everything around Vergil. So that is what you gotta do here. Basically, you keep holding, like you hold the Mirage Blade button for the Spiral Blades to appear, and once they've appeared, you let go of the Mirage Blade button, only to immediately press and hold it again, and you just don't let go of it until, you know, the setup appears, until I tell you to. So that's basically how this works. So, after using Yamato Combo B, Vergil will blow the enemy away directly onto the round trip. Again, at this point, you summon the haste version of the Doppelganger, the one who is in sync with you and mimics all of your commands immediately. And now, the moment you've summoned the Doppelganger, before he's even fully formed, while he's still a blur, you immediately use Rapid Slash, which is right plus attack button. And this is the case with like 50 combos, you already know this, but it's imperative that you immediately use Rapid Slash. Do not wait, because if you wait for the Doppelganger to fully form, what's going to happen is he will form and he will use Rapid Slash with Vergil. You don't want that. You don't want to give the Doppelganger any time to react to your commands. You gotta summon him, and before he's fully formed, while he's still a blur, you immediately use Rapid Slash. You basically cancel the Doppelganger summon, alright? So, now that you've used Rapid Slash, you know, you gotta keep holding the Mirage Blade button, you keep holding it, and now, you input Void Slash while you're using Rapid Slash. So now you're done, you're here, you make sure to input Void Slash. And as you guys already know, when the enemy is in front of you, Void Slash is back plus forward plus attack button, right? But if you're behind the enemy, like this is the case with the Doppelganger, Void Slash is forward plus back plus attack button, or well, W plus S plus left mouse button, so it's the reverse. The Doppelganger reacts to your commands, and he is behind the enemy. So if you want the Doppelganger to use Void Slash, you gotta input Void Slash, which in this case is forward plus back plus attack button, or W plus S plus left mouse button, and this will cause the Doppelganger to use Void Slash. At this point, you immediately let go of the Mirage Blade button, and this will cause the Spiral Blades to scatter, blowing the enemy away directly into the Doppelganger's Void Slash, and the Doppelganger will end up catching the enemy with Void Slash. That is how this works. That's kind of like the focal point of this combo. The fact that you can blow the enemy away with the Spiral Blades directly towards the Doppelganger, who will catch the enemy in midair with their Void Slash. That is basically how this works. Now, for this to work, you need to have really good, like almost immaculate timing, but it's really not that difficult, believe me. So, I'll talk about this later. Let's just finish up the analysis for now. So, basically, you know, the Doppelganger, he will catch the enemy with Void Slash. At this point, you're free to go into your Sin DT, but you can also go into your Sin DT later. It really doesn't matter. So you just start charging your Sin DT, and you go into your Sin DT, but you can do it later, it doesn't matter. At this point, you switch the Mirage Edge, and you use High Time Tool. Now, High Time Tool with the Mirage Edge is back plus holding the attack button, and this will cause Vergil to launch himself into the air with the Mirage Edge, basically. So, back plus holding the attack button, that is High Time Tool. However, the Doppelganger is behind the enemy, like this. And as you already know, the Doppelganger can only use the Yamato. He doesn't react to your moves, he reacts to your inputs. And he's behind the enemy, like this. So when you press back and you hold the attack button, when you're behind the enemy with the Yamato, that is Rising Star. And the Doppelganger will use Rising Star because he can only use the Yamato and he reacts to you pressing back and holding the attack button. So essentially, Vergil does High Time 2 with the Mirage Edge, and the Doppelganger uses Rising Star with the Yamato. So immediately after using High Time with Vergil, you use Trig Down to descend to the ground, and you keep holding the attack button. This is incredibly important. So you press back and you keep holding the attack button. You don't let go of it. At this point, once you're on the ground, once your Mirage Edge starts glowing, make sure to release the attack button, and this will cause two things to happen. The first thing that's going to happen is the Doppelganger will use a Judgment Cut, and Vergil will use Round Trip with the Mirage Edge. Alright? And at this point, you call the Doppelganger back to your position, in my case by pressing V. And the enemy will fall directly onto the round trip. So what happens here essentially is, you guys already know this because I told you, but if you hold the attack button for a very long time with the Mirage Edge and then you release it, that will result in round trip. In this case, Vergil has the Mirage Edge equipped. I keep holding the attack button and then I release it and he does round trip. But the Doppelganger can only use the Yamato and he reacts to my commands. If you hold the attack button for a very long time with the Yamato and then you release it, that will result in a Judgment Cut. And that is exactly why Vergil's Doppelganger ends up using a Judgment Cut, because he reacts to you pressing and holding the attack button before releasing it. So the Doppelganger uses a Judgment Cut and Vergil uses Round Trip. Oh, and one more thing, this is imperative, make sure you don't call the Doppelganger back to your position before they're done with the Judgment Cut. I have made this mistake a billion times. I would call the Doppelganger back to my position before they could do the Judgment Cut. And as a result, the enemy would simply fall to the ground way too early, you know? So the purpose of this Judgment Cut is to keep the enemy airborne long enough for them to actually fall directly onto the round trip. If the Doppelganger doesn't do a Judgment Cut, if you call them back to your position before they're able to do it, the enemy will fall to the ground before the round trip reaches them. So make sure you don't make that mistake. Like I said, at this point, you call the Doppelganger back to your position, you switch to Beowulf, and you use Lunar Phase, which in this case is forward plus attack button. The Doppelganger will now use Rapid Slash, and the reason for that is the Doppelganger is right next to you, like the enemy is in front of him. He can only use the Yamato. When you press forward plus attack button with Beowulf, and the enemy is in front of you, that is Lunar Phase, so Vergil does Lunar Phase. But if the enemy is in front of you, and you have the Yamato equipped, and you press forward plus attack button, that is Rapid Slash. The Doppelganger reacts to your commands, and he can only use the Yamato, so when you press forward plus attack button, Vergil will use Lunar Phase, and the Doppelganger will use Rapid Slash, alright? That's basically it. And once you use Lunar Phase, make sure to immediately cancel it by using Trig Down. So you just use Lunar Phase and immediately, like the moment it comes out, you just cancel it by using Trig Down to basically teleport to the ground. At this point, you once again switch to the Yamato, and you input the Storm Blades, which is back plus holding the Mirage Blade button, and you don't let go of the Mirage Blade button until it's time. At this point, all you gotta do is basically use Yamato Combo A, and both Vergil and the Doppelganger will use Yamato Combo A. They will slash the enemy from both sides, which will result in this X slash, if you're lucky, and once you're done with the final hit of Yamato Combo A, you finally let go of the Mirage Blade button, and this will cause the Storm Blades to launch the enemy into the air, because the Storm Blades are, well, basically, they launch the enemy into the air. Like, they surround the enemy, and when you stop holding the Mirage Blade button, they launch them into the air. So once the enemy has been launched into the air by the Storm Blades, you use Judgment Cut End, and before the enemy falls to the ground, you input the Blistering Blades, which is forward plus holding the Mirage Blade button, right? And then you release it. and this will prevent the enemy from falling to the ground. It'll keep them airborne, and at this point, you simply use Judgment Cut End, and that is the end of the Spiral combo. Now, before I actually start talking about all the issues you can encounter with this combo, I feel the need to clarify this one thing. So, this one guy asked me, when he saw the combo, he asked me, what is the point of this reverse starfall? You only ended up in the same position as when you started the combo. Now, you guys already know that with these combos, sometimes you do things that are ultimately redundant for stylish purposes, but sometimes you gotta do things out of necessity, and this is one of those cases. So, this reverse starfall, it was necessary, it was indispensable. Because imagine if I literally used drive immediately after canceling Rising Star. This would end up happening. So this is what happens if you use drive immediately after canceling Rising Star. The combo fails, because you're not in the same position, right? When you use that reverse starfall and then rapid slash, you gain some distance away from the enemy, and you have to use that judgment cut, and then you're allowed to use drive. So you're not in the same position. This is definitely necessary, right? So you gotta use that reverse starfall. Just felt the need to clarify that, and now let's start talking about all the problems you can encounter with this combo and all the mistakes you can make. So, we've already talked about this. The first thing can happen is you can end up using a normal starfall instead of that reverse starfall, and this happens if you don't let go of the lock-on and you don't press right plus the tag button. In these instances, you can see how I am pressing right plus the tag button, but I am still locked on. You gotta let go of the lock-on and use a reverse starfall, otherwise you'll end up using a normal starfall. So, yeah. The second mistake you can make is rapid slash can go underneath the enemy. This happens if you use rapid slash way too early. You need to wait like a fraction of a millisecond before inputting rapid slash, right? Because otherwise this happens, and Vergil goes right underneath the enemy and he doesn't graze them, and as a result the enemy falls to the ground. But conversely, you can also use rapid slash too late, and this happens when you wait too long to input rapid slash. If this happens, the enemy will be on the ground after you've done rapid slash, and this is also a problem. You can also end up using a normal judgment cut instead of a perfect judgment cut. Now, this is a timing issue. It's really not gonna be common if you know how to use perfect judgment cuts, but if you hold the attack button too long before releasing it, you will end up using a normal judgment cut. But by the same token, if you don't hold the attack button long enough, if you let go of the attack button too early, you won't end up using judgment cut at all. Like, there will be no judgment cut. So it's like, pick your poison. If you hold the attack button for too long, you do a regular judgment cut. If you don't hold it long enough, you don't use it at all. So you gotta have that perfect timing to use that perfect judgment cut. So yeah. Now, here you can see how I didn't charge round trip long enough. Now, this is, for some reason, I'm not going to say that this is a common issue. It is an issue with me. You gotta hold the attack button for a very long time while using drive. So left plus right, and you keep holding the attack button until your Mirage Edge starts glowing. And only when it starts glowing do you release the attack button, and then round trip will come out. In all of these instances, and believe me, these are all different instances, I don't hold the attack button long enough. I release it too early, and round trip doesn't even end up coming out. So this is something to keep in mind. Like, bear this in mind. Just hold the attack button for a very long time while using drive. Okay, so here you can see how there were no heavy rain blades. And this, I believe, is one of those inexplicable camera issues with the game. So when you're on the left side, on the ground, left plus right plus Mirage Blade button, or in my case, A plus D plus right mouse button, is the heavy rain blades. And I am clearly pressing left plus right plus Mirage Blade button, but the heavy rain blades are not coming out. And this has happened so many times. I'm not going to say that it's one of the most frequent issues I've encountered, but it's definitely something that did happen multiple times, and it was incredibly annoying, and I do believe that this is a camera issue. Now here you can see how the heavy rain blades, for whatever godforsaken reason, end up falling way too late. Even though I let go of the right mouse button, or the Mirage Blade button in time, I immediately input and release the heavy rain blades. They ended up falling way too late, and the enemy's altitude was way too low, so round trip ended up grazing the enemy, like this. So, yeah, this is something that can happen. It didn't happen way too frequently, but it was annoying, so, yeah. Here you can see how, I guess I used the spiral blades way too early. So, that one blade didn't end up unfreezing the enemy. The enemy didn't get unfrozen, because the enemy, the heavy rain blades, they froze the enemy in time, in the air, and when you input the spiral blades, that one Mirage Blade will embed itself into the enemy, and it will unfreeze the enemy. But here, I guess I used the spiral blades way too early, maybe before the enemy was frozen in time by the heavy rain blades, so that one Mirage Blade didn't embed itself into the enemy, and it didn't really unfreeze them. This happened a few times. I'm not gonna lie, it is a very annoying issue, but again, it's not incredibly frequent. Here you can see how I ended up using one hit of Yamato combo B instead of two. Even though I clearly, I was sure, I was goddamn positive that I did, I input 2 hits. No, it was just 1. So, whatever. Now here you can see how apparently, the pause for Yamato Combo B was not long enough. Because Yamato Combo B is attack button, pause, and then attack button. But apparently here, the pause wasn't long enough. And I ended up using the rest of, I guess, Yamato Combo A. Why this happened, I was positive the pause was, long enough. It was long enough. I don't know why the game thought it wasn't, but oh well. But by the same token, you can also encounter this issue where the pause is way too long somehow. Bro, this pause was not way too long. When this happens, you reset Yamato Combo B, you don't use the final hit. Bro, I don't think the pause was that long. The game for some reason was oh yeah, this is way too long. I don't know why. I guess I will own up to it. I guess it is a skill issue, but this is we're talking frames here. I don't even know how this happened nor why, but yeah. Now here you can see this very weird issue where I'm too far away from the enemy, and Yamato Combo B, the last hit, doesn't even reach the enemy. Now look, this happens, I guess, because Rapid Slash ends up taking me way too far away from the enemy. Now, maybe this has to do with the enemy's altitude, I don't really know. In this one example, in this one instance, you can see how this happened because I was in Sin DT. For some reason, I was using my Sin Double trigger, and when you use Rapid Slash, when you're in your Sin DT, Rapid Slash takes you way farther. So in this example, I understand. But in all these other examples, I wasn't in SDT, I was in base form, and it still didn't work. So I don't know, but again, this isn't exactly a very frequent issue, alright? So let's move on. So here you can see how the last hit of Yamato Combo B, once again, doesn't connect. But here, it's a little more peculiar. Now, this clearly has to do with 2 things. Basically, it has to do with the distance between Vergil and the enemy, and it also has to do with the enemy's altitude. So basically, the enemy is too high in the air, they're too high up, so when I use the final hit of Yamato Combo B, it doesn't really hit them, because they're kind of too high up. But at the same time, this wouldn't happen, this wouldn't be happening if the enemy was farther away from Vergil. They're too close, and it's just this perfect disaster. I don't really know what this depends on. I guess one way to circumvent this would be to, like, delay Yamato combo B. Wait for the enemy to be fully on the round trip, to fully fall to the round trip, and then you use Yamato combo B. But honestly, if you see this, if you can sniff this out, if you can see that this is happening, I would suggest just retrying the combo from scratch, because, you know, it really doesn't hurt. Now here you can see how spiral blades end up not even hitting the enemy when they scatter. So as you already know, the spiral blades, they're supposed to scatter and hit everything around them, and in doing so, they will also blow the enemy directly towards the doppelganger. But here, they don't do anything. Maybe it's because of the enemy's altitude, but I really don't think so. This is really, it didn't really happen a lot. It can happen if you're very unlucky, but 8 times out of 10, it is not going to happen. Not fucking 9 times out of 10. So, yeah, this is something. And also, in this particular example, I kind of input the spiral blades too late, so there's that. Now we have this issue, and this is a frequent issue, I am not going to lie, and if this happens, just immediately redo the entire combo. I don't know if this is a skill issue. I'm inclined to say that it isn't, and that, you know, it's just the game being, you know, weird and stupid, but I'm gonna call this the delayed rapid slash thingy issue. So, you know, rapid slash, the way this attack works is Vergil cuts through the enemy, he blitzes the enemy, and, you know, the enemy kind of gets cut up by all these slashes at once. It's kind of like delayed. You know, that's how rapid slash works. It's very similar to every anime move where, you know, you cut through the enemy, you know, with your sword, and then you sheath your sword, and the enemy just starts. Only then do they actually feel the impact, as you can see here. This is basically the same as, let's take Gyu from Demon Slayer, his 11th form, Dead Calm. Like, that's the same thing. You know, you cut through the enemy before they even notice it, and you see these slashes, right? Well, these slashes actually keep the enemy airborne. They keep the enemy from falling to the ground. And because of this, you can't know when to release the spiral blades. Because if you release the spiral blades at this point, the enemy is too high up in the air, and the spiral blades will go right underneath the enemy when they scatter, and they won't hit the enemy. But if you wait, it's gonna be messed up because it's very likely that the enemy will fall to the ground. If you see this, just look at all these instances. There are like a billion examples. They're all different examples. This is one of the most frequent issues you can encounter, and I don't really know how to escape that. So basically, in all these examples, you can see how I cut through the enemy with rapid slash, and you see this delayed effect. You can hear the sounds. You can see how the enemy is tweaking. When you see the enemy tweaking in the air after rapid slash, at that point, you know the combo isn't going to work. Just retry it immediately. You know, it's just not going to work. This is an incredibly annoying issue, and I really don't know how to handle it. Maybe it's got to do with the enemy's altitude somehow, but I really, you know, that will be guesswork. I'm only speculating, I'm spitballing here, so I really have no idea. But it is one of the most frequent issues that you can encounter, so yeah. And now we have the single most frequent issue that you can encounter with this combo. And this is the same exact thing that happened with the Moist combo. The same exact identical thing. That's why I decided to do this combo in the Moist stage, right? It's the same exact issue. In the Moist combo, you're supposed to use Yamato combo B to blow the enemy away towards the Doppelganger, and the Doppelganger is supposed to use Void Slash, right? But here, you do the same thing, except instead of Yamato combo B, you blow the enemy away towards the Doppelganger by using the Spiral Blades. However, the issue remains the same. The game simply refuses to react to your commands. It doesn't register you pressing forward plus back plus attack button. So let me, once again, just say this. Let me reiterate. Basically, Void Slash is back plus forward plus attack button when the enemy is in front of you. So S plus W plus left mouse button. But if you're behind the enemy, like this, then it's forward plus back plus attack button, or W plus S plus left mouse button. So it's the reverse. And the Doppelganger is behind the enemy, he reacts to your inputs, so when you press forward plus back plus attack button, the Doppelganger should use Void Slash, right? But what ends up happening is the Doppelganger ends up using upper slash instead. Now, upper slash, when you're behind the enemy like this, when you're behind the enemy like this, is forward plus attack button. So what ends up happening here is, even though I am clearly pressing forward plus back plus attack button, or W plus S plus left mouse button, the Doppelganger does not react to me pressing back. It only reacts to me pressing forward plus attack button, and as a result, he ends up using upper slash instead of Void Slash. This is the most frequent issue you can encounter with this combo, and it drives me nuts. It literally drove me insane, and it's the same thing that happened with the Moist combo, or, well, I later called it the Vermilion combo. It's the exact same thing, and I am positive, we've kind of already established this in the Moist combo analysis, you have the timestamp and all, I am pretty certain that this has to do with the camera. The camera doesn't register the Doppelganger as being behind the enemy. It registers the Doppelganger as being to the left side or right side, which makes absolutely zero sense. But yeah, as you can see, there are a billion examples, all different instances by the way, where the Doppelganger ends up using upper slash, which is forward plus attack button, instead of Void Slash, which is forward plus back plus attack button, even though, when you look at my keyboard, I am clearly inputting Void Slash. I am very tired of this, but that's not all. Sometimes the Doppelganger will use upper slash, but sometimes he will use rapid slash. Rapid slash is back plus attack button when you're behind the enemy. So what ends up happening here is, and this is less frequent, it's still frequent, it's very frequent, but it's not nearly as frequent as upper slash. So basically, I press forward plus back plus attack button, but the game either reacts to me pressing forward plus attack button or back plus attack button. It's like the game is incapable of registering me pressing these three inputs in one go, and the Doppelganger just doesn't react properly. I don't know how else to explain this. I don't know what to say, but this is by far the most agonizing thing you can experience with this combo, and I've spoken to some advanced players about this, and they experience the same thing. Not with this particular combo, of course, but with a lot of different Doppelganger setups, and it is by far the most annoying thing. And here you can see how the Doppelganger ended up using the first hit of Yamato combo A instead of Void Slash. Now, this didn't happen. This you could say this is also on me in a way, but, you know, whatever. It's just not that frequent, so we'll ignore this for now. Here you can see how Vergil ends up using Beast Uppercut, or, well, upper slash with the Yamato, because I input Void Slash way too late, you know? And Vergil was done sheathing his sword after Rapid Slash, so he reacted to me pressing back plus attack button. You know what I'm trying to say? Basically, while Vergil is sheathing his sword after using Rapid Slash, he doesn't react to inputs. So that is why you're able to input Void Slash, and the Doppelganger will use it, but Vergil won't, because Vergil is too busy sheathing his sword after Rapid Slash. But here, I waited for Vergil to, finish sheathing his sword after Rapid Slash, and then I input forward plus back plus attack button, and as a result, Vergil reacted to my inputs, and he ended up using upper slash and beast uppercut because, well, he was done sheathing his sword. So that's one thing that can definitely happen. So keep that in mind. Make sure that you input Void Slash before Vergil is done sheathing his sword. Here we can see how I released the Spiral Blades way too early. This can definitely happen. If this ends up happening, the Spiral Blades will go right underneath the enemy, and they will scatter, but they won't hit the enemy, and as a result, they won't blow the enemy away towards the Doppelganger, and the combo will simply not work. You need to have perfect timing when it comes to this, this whole thing with timing the Spiral Blades and all. Here you can see how I ended up using Void Slash. I ended up inputting Void Slash way too late, and the enemy was already on the ground when the Doppelganger, basically used Void Slash to trap them. This is something that can definitely happen. You can see all these instances where I input Void Slash way too late. And this is kind of like the most important part, like the skill, that this is a skill issue. You need to have perfect timing, and you need to know exactly when to release the Spiral Blades and when to input Void Slash. If you do one or the other too early or too late, you're cooked. The combo fails. So this varies, but I will show you all of these examples, all these instances where, where I had perfect timing during this setup. So here you can see how after using Rapid Slash, the first thing I do is I input Void Slash and I release the Spiral Blades at the exact same time almost. And the combo ends up working perfectly. You can see that here. And here you can see how the first thing I do is I let go of the Spiral Blades, and then immediately afterwards, I input Void Slash, and it works. It still works. Here you can see how the first thing I do in this particular example is I input Void Slash, and then I let go of the Spiral Blades, and it ends up working. And here you can see how the first thing I do is I input Void Slash once again, and then I let go of the Spiral Blades, and it works. So, yeah, here you can see how I basically let go of the Spiral Blades, and then I input Void Slash, and that also works. And here you can also see how the first thing I do is I let go of Spiral Blades, I let go of my Mirage Blade button, or my right mouse button, and then I input Void Slash, and it still works. Now, you're probably confused, so what am I supposed to do first? Am I supposed to let go of the Spiral Blades first and then input Void Slash? Or am I supposed to input Void Slash and then let go of the Spiral Blades? I think that the key here isn't in what you're supposed to do first, but the delay between the two. I think that the moment you release the Spiral Blades, you immediately input Void Slash. Immediately after letting go of the Mirage Blade button, or in my case, the right mouse button, you immediately input Void Slash. Or, if you input Void Slash first, make sure to immediately let go of the Spiral Blades. So you gotta be very fast. It doesn't matter if you input Void Slash first, or if you let go of the Spiral Blades first. Whatever you do, make sure that you do these two consecutively in very quick succession. That is very important. Here we can see one of the most frequent issues in the combo. Now, I would actually venture to say that sometimes this is even more frequent and more annoying than the upper slash issue with the Doppelganger. And once again, it has to do with the game not reacting to my commands and my inputs. It's, once again, I think, a camera issue where the Doppelganger doesn't do what I say. So, when you are, when the enemy is in front of you and you have the Mirage Edge, you press back and you hold the attack button, that is high time too. Vergil launches himself into the air with the Mirage Edge. But the Doppelganger is behind the enemy, and he only uses the Yamato. When you press back and you hold the attack button, and you're behind the enemy with the Yamato, that is Rising Star. So what's supposed to happen here, essentially, is I'm supposed to press back and hold the attack button. Vergil is supposed to use High Time Tool with the Mirage Edge, and the Doppelganger is supposed to use Rising Star with the Yamato to launch the enemy into the air. But as you can see, that doesn't happen at all. Either the Doppelganger does nothing, or he does something completely different. In most of these examples, the Doppelganger goes back to my position because when I let go of the attack button, he uses a perfect judgment cut, which basically causes him to go back to my position. None of this would be happening if the Doppelganger simply reacted to my commands, but he doesn't. He just stays there because for some reason, this goddamn game does not, like the camera of this game, doesn't register the Doppelganger as being behind the enemy, probably, and as a result, it doesn't register my inputs. This is the most infuriating thing about the Doppelganger. Like, he just won't listen to you, because the game won't listen to you. Here you can see this common mistake, and this is a skill issue, by the way, or well, rather, it's me being hasty. Basically, I call the Doppelganger back to my position way too early before he does that judgment cut. As you guys already know, when you use High Time with the Mirage Edge and you use Trig Down, you're supposed to finally let go of the attack button after holding it for a very long time. Vergil will use Round Trip, and the Doppelganger will use a Judgment Cut, because you're holding the attack button and releasing it, right? He will use a Judgment Cut. And this Judgment Cut is supposed to keep the enemy from falling to the ground so fast. It's supposed to keep the enemy airborne. But what ends up happening in these instances is I call the Doppelganger back to my position before he can use Judgment Cut on the enemy. And as a result, the enemy falls to the ground before the Round Trip can catch them. You know what I mean? You have so many examples of this happening. Make sure, please, for the love of all that is holy, make sure to pay attention to the Doppelganger and make sure that he does that Judgment Cut. And only when you see that the Doppelganger has used Judgment Cut on the enemy to keep them airborne, only then are you free to actually call him back to your position. So this is very important. Don't be hasty like me. This happened a billion times. This is a very frequent mistake, but this is a mistake. It's not an issue. It's a mistake because I was way too hasty. So make sure you don't make the same mistake. Oh man, this is also incredibly frequent. There's nothing worse than when you do a combo nigh perfectly, and then at the very end, something just happens and it destroys you completely. And once again, this is not a skill issue. You've probably noticed that with this combo and with 90% of my combos that I've replicated, it's almost never a skill issue. It is always the camera or something with the distance, the altitude, the game not responding to your commands. This is what happens 90% of the time. So in this case, in this example, there are 5 billion examples, by the way. I end up using Yamato Combo A, like Sin DT Yamato Combo A, and the final hit of Yamato Combo A doesn't end up connecting because the enemy is too high up in the air. They're way too high up in the air, so when you use Yamato Combo A, you simply won't connect it. So I don't know what to even say about this. Like, I genuinely don't know. I thought that maybe this has to do with how high the enemy is up on the round trip, but I really don't know how you can possibly affect that. You have no influence over that. So this is something that can happen, and you just gotta pray that it doesn't happen. So, yeah. And finally, we have the age-old issue where I do the combo absolutely perfectly, and I use Judgment Cut End. I input forward plus trig button plus attack button, and instead of Judgment Cut End, the game does air trick, and Vergil teleports to the enemy instead of using a Judgment Cut End. Now, Judgment Cut End, like I said, is forward plus trig button plus attack button, right? So that's what it is. And basically, you lock on, of course. Air trick is just locking on and pressing the trig button. So Shift plus E. That means that this game reacted to me pressing lock on plus trig button, but it didn't react to me pressing forward or the attack button. And once again, I think this has to do with the enemy's altitude and the camera. Like, this happens with almost every combo. Every combo that requires you to use an ultimate, like a super move, be it Hell on Earth, or Deep Stinger, or Judgment Cut End, you end up using Air Trick instead. It is the most agonizing thing ever. You can see here how I did the combo perfectly. As a matter of fact, this is the instance I ended up going with, but I had to cut it because I was like, well, I'm not counting this. This combo worked. It's just that it didn't do Judgment Cut End, as you can see here. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video and this combo analysis. There are quite a few mistakes you can make, and like I said, I'm not going to call them mistakes. I've been doing this all wrong. I keep calling these things mistakes. They're not mistakes. They are problems. They are issues, and 99% of the time, they're not a skill issue. They're a game issue, a camera issue, lock-on issue, whatever you want to call it. So don't beat yourself up over not being able to do this immediately. It's definitely this game being very inconsistent. I love this game to death, but I gotta acknowledge the fact that it's very inconsistent, and you gotta pay attention to so many things, and there's so many things that are not within the scope of your ability, like they're completely out of your control, so yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna leave you with this compilation of perfect attempts, at least for the first part, and yeah. Once again, I hope you enjoyed the video. See ya, and peace out.
Yield the soda hell! So, your nightmare wreck! Soda hell! Die! Fly! Go to hell! Silence! Die!